Hi, welcome to the 15th program in this Art in Arlington series. In this program, we meet with Hank Kearsley. Hank Kearsley is a photographer, a painter, and also a sculptor who lives in Newton. And Hank's connection to Arlington is that he was a person that taught Connie Chamberlain, the artist in the 6th program in this series, how to paint. Hank is 87 years old, and as Hank told me, when I ask him a question, it brings up a lot of thoughts. And Hank is willing to share a lot of his thoughts with me, and we talk about a variety of topics, from how he came to be an artist, what it was like teaching in Wellesley in the 70s, his interactions with the civil rights movement, his feelings about digital versus analog photography and drawing, and of course he shows us some of his paintings and sculptures. So I think you're going to enjoy listening to Hank. It's a long conversation, but I think it's well worth it, and as always, I thank you for watching. So Hank Kearsley, I want to thank you a lot for taking the time to meet with me. And as I've introduced you, you're actually the person that has instructed another person that interviewed Connie Chamberlain. And she had nothing but wonderful things to say about you and how much you've helped her become a painter, an artist, a better artist. And so how long have you been an artist?
How long? Let's see. I don't know, since about the 4th grade or so, I've been doing artwork.
Okay. So doing a little math here, so that'd be like 9. You were 9 then. And I was just told that you're in your mid-80s, so that's like over 70 years, right? Being an artist.
Yeah, I actually had two twin brothers who were like about 15 months older than me, and they did artwork, and so I kind of followed in their path. And actually, they one of them just passed away about 2 weeks ago, but following them in school, every time I went to an art class, their work was there, and so I kind of, as soon as I got into that art room, people thought, well, yeah, Kearsley, you can do artwork too,
Uh-huh.
So I did kind of live up to that, and except that my art was different. Theirs was more traditional and standard layouts and things of that nature. And I used to do kind of creative artwork under the desk, like paintings and drawings I wanted to do, and which the teacher did not appreciate very much.
I got you. Yeah. So you've always pretty much worked in the visual arts, right?
Yeah.
And painting, drawing.
Paintings, drawings. Then I went to did a little commercial artwork, and went to a commercial art school in New York for a little bit, but it just kind of too tight for me, and couldn't be creative as I would want to be, So I kind of switched into fine arts, Seemed like it's more interesting to me. So there was a point where I was kind of doing both for a while, but you have to make a little money,
Right.
So, but I guess I was out of high school for about 10 years, and I decided I would go to try to go to college, and I was working VA hospital from 12 at night to 8 in the morning, and I would drive from Croton-on-Hudson, where I was born, all the way to NYU in New York to go to school for 4 years, and art education, looking for art education because I knew I had to get a job teaching or something to make some money.
Right.
And so I got out of school and was looking for a job as a teacher, which, you know, that time was very difficult for any black teacher.
Uh-huh.
So I finally got a job at the VA,
Uh-huh.
working at nights there, and so I didn't give up that job. I kept that job because the job I took, they hired me because the art teacher there had hurt her back and hadn't been going in for months. And so they had a librarian teaching art. So the librarian lived in my same town, and she knew I did artwork, so she came to me and asked me if I would want to go in as a permanent sub, and I did. And so I had this crazy thing of having two jobs, working from 12 at night to 8 in the morning at the VA, and then going in to teach school at 8 o'clock all day. But it was nice because I was getting like 2 salaries, you know.
Right.
So so I did that until they finally got some sort of litigation and fired that teacher. So but never in my life did I ever think that I would be teaching school or kids. I mean, that wasn't my thing. I was driving tractors and doing blacktop driveways and driving trucks and working on a farm. That painting over there is the farm that I worked on through high school and before I went to art school. You know, in the summers I worked there, and it was an interesting place because the people who owned it, very, very well known psychiatrist, and Adele Levy was the name of the woman, and I found out later on she was the patron of Jacob Lawrence, the artist, and she put him to school and everything, you know, and here I was doing like drawings and paintings of that place, and she never knew it, you know. I had given a couple of the paintings to the superintendent who worked there, nice guy, but he didn't, you know, he didn't think about giving it to her or anything like that, you know. And it was an interesting place because I did a lot of drawings and paintings there, and I really didn't find out till she passed away. There was an article in the New York Times that she was patron of the arts, and she supported Jacob Lawrence all through these years, you know, and so I kind of missed that ship, you know.
Yeah, well, you know.
But I would be there, and if people would come to visit them, and they would have these big cars. They come up. They have in that lower section of the barnyard. I would drive cars down into that lower section and park them. You know. So one day I was up there, and the chauffeur said, "Park this car down. Take it down." You know. So I got in this big Cadillac. And it was a time with the automatic transmission. I had never driven one of those before. So I get in there and I step on the gas and the car goes backwards, you know, and
Right.
and and very embarrassed to look up, and whose car was it? Eleanor Roosevelt's.
Wow. Wow.
So the show yelled, "Step on the gas, Hank!" You know, I stepped on the gas and went around a curve and went down the lower area to park it. But it's interesting to be, say, you know, 17, 18 in that age and meet people like that and then really not be able to capitalize on it, you know.
Right. So then, have you done anything other than paintings and drawings?
Yeah, well, when I got really involved in teaching, then I got also involved in civil rights movement at that time, and I was doing a lot of photography, and one of the things I used to do was to gather those little disposable cameras
Yeah.
and give them to the activist Tracy Sugarman, and he would take them south so people could record the sit-ins and things like that.
Right.
He's Arthur. I have his book about the civil rights movements, and then I met up with Guy Carawan, the folk singer, and Candy Carawan, who they would go south and sing, you know, sing at in the Appalachians and at much like Pete Seeger, you know, and so just about 3 years ago, I have a copy of their songs and sheet music that they signed. But when Betty and I went to D.C., and it was actually before this new Black History Museum was open.
Right.
But we went to D.C. and the institute that they had there, African American Institute, had copies of Guy Carawan's music that I already had, you know, which I was like amazed. So I did a lot with that, civil rights and the ACLU, and then when I came up here to teach in Wellesley, got very involved because all of a sudden they hired me from New York to come up and teach, and I, at that point in Peekskill, it was like a disadvantaged area for blacks.
Yeah.
They had the Robeson riots down there, and Paul Robeson, and then coming to Wellesley, all of a sudden, I realized that they didn't want me there. I was the only black teacher in the system for about 20 years, you know. They, in a sense, felt like they hired me because they were an equal opportunity employee. So they got money for me being there.
Right.
But when I went to the art department, they interviewed me, and there were two teachers I found there who told me later on that they never interviewed anybody. They had the whole staff there just sitting there firing questions at me, you know, and so I got the job anyway, and I crux of the situation, I kind of walked around there for almost 3 years, and teachers would not speak to me in the halls or anything, but the greatest thing was the kids. The kids were great, and I told them I was from New York, and that first of all, that a kid raised his hand and said, are you a janitor? You got keys? And I said, no, I'm a teacher here. And she said, no, you look like the guy that comes to clean my house. And I'm putting up with this stuff, you know. And I finally said, no. I said, but I have a house. You can come and clean mine if you want, you know. And so I kind of got him hooked. And that same girl, I mean, still talk to today. I would, anytime she would do a drawing, I would go right to her and say, well, you have to fix this, or this doesn't work. And so I made my business to go around to each student. And so we had you teach for like half a semester and you switch classes. So I would take the kids to Friendlies down the street from the school, take them in there and buy them ice cream, sodas, you know, and then I did that twice. Both times they wouldn't serve me, they served the kids. And now I'm paying for it.
Right. So what year was this?
This is in Wellesley.
But what year?
This is 74.
74.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, 74.
And so this other woman who they was talking about, who married a guy from Ghana, Ella, she was working there at the time. She got out of there, but she went with me once, and same thing happened. Went to a restaurant. We had a student with us, and we were sitting there, you know, and suddenly we realized, guys, not waiting on us. People who owned the place were Dutch, you know, and the guy said, I'm not serving you because you've been in here before and caused trouble. And I said, I've never been in this place before. I'd never been there, and I'd never be in here again, you know.
Huh.
So the kid, who's very influential, his father in town, he blew up and said, my father's gonna do this and that, he's gonna sue you, you know. But that was what I put up with in Wellesley, and after I got all these awards for teaching, and I, you know, was active in the Medco program, and I was teaching at after school, because I was teaching photography. So I ran a program, and I offered photography to kids who come in and stay about an hour after school, you know, like sixth graders, because I knew that by the time they got to me, it would make my life a lot easier if I taught them basics then, you know, after school, you know. And that really worked. I had many students that, you know, that I could rely on later on to do photography, you know. So it was good. We would take the students to Marblehead on field trips and things like that. So then one day they sent a message downstairs to tell me that they're riffing some teachers because they have too many teachers. Now I'm teaching architecture, photography, drawing, painting, sculpture, and pottery, and photography. And they decided they're gonna let me go because I'd been there. They didn't need me anymore. So I said, what basis are you letting me go? They said, because you're the last person, senior people ahead of you. And I said, I'm the senior person in the art department now, you know. So I had to go to the superintendent, and I told him the same story. I'm senior member of the department, and he told me, he says, no, you're not. This other woman is. I said, that woman is in the dance department, not art department. So he said, I'll check it out. He checked it out. He came back the next day and said, you're right. He said, but it's still you, you know. So I said, okay. So I went and got a lawyer, and lawyers, the two guys, they were great. They talked to me like half the night, and they finally figured out that they couldn't really prove anything, you know. So they said, go to the school committee and just talk to them and see what happens, you know. So I didn't do that. I went back to school. I had a lot of parents writing stuff saying that, you know, that I shouldn't be let go. But I went into the superintendent's office, and I told him, I said, well, my lawyer is going to be contacting you. As soon as I said lawyer, they had just tried to settle a suit. This guy was in the art department, and he was actually an alcoholic, drunk all the time. I was a cover for this guy so many times. And they fired him because they said that they didn't have enough classes for him, which wasn't true. And he sued them for big, big bucks. So they weren't about to have another lawsuit. So next thing I know, they said, well, we got it wrong. You can stay. You know. So I stayed there, and it was great with the kids, you know. And so that was the most racist town I've ever been in, you know. Besides the town I grew up in, but they were blatant out there, you know. And, there were a few Jews there and a few Asians, but other than that, you know, nothing, you know.
This is, you talk about the town you grew up in?
Huh?
You talk about the town you grew up in or Wellesley?
Wellesley, town of Wellesley.
I got you. So what town you grew up in?
Huh?
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in the village of Croton-on-the-Hudson, New York, you know. Right behind you is the Croton Dam that was built. My grandfather was a rigger on that Croton Dam
Huh.
years ago.
Wow, that's a beautiful painting.
And
That's beautiful, wow.
so there's a lot of history there. My
Wow.
father was born there, and I was born in a house there. And my father was the ice man. He had his business, the only black business in town.
Uh-huh.
He had a Croton Ice Service.
Huh.
So
they would harvest ice off of the river or something?
well, at first he did that, but then later on they built what they call an ice house
Uh-huh.
in Austin, New York, which is near Sing Sing, right? You go down there and 5 o'clock in the morning, you pick up these cakes of ice, and he had a little ice place that he built that he stored the ice during the day, so we go back and forth
Right.
during the day delivering. So we used to do, as kids, my brothers and I, we carried ice, and you know, and in the wintertime it was wood or coal, you know, and so it was tough, but we were all very strong, you know. Carrying that ice is no.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll bet.
So.
Yeah.
So in that painting, there are 6 kids, and so I made them all into blocks of ice.
Oh, okay.
And then there's another painting similar to that those blocks of ice, it came in these huge blocks. I turned the blocks like this vertically and made them into refrigerators.
Huh.
Because the free refrigerators came and they took over that ice business.
Right.
You know? So the painting was called The End of an Era. So
right.
that was his ice business, you know.
Right. I got you.
So,
Huh.
yeah.
So there's 6 kids in your family.
Mhm.
6 kids in your family? 6 kids in your family?
Yeah,
I got it.
6 kids.
So, I just want to go back to the Wellesley period a little bit, and because you had mentioned that it seemed like you were ostracized by the other teachers, and
Yeah.
but then you mentioned that you received awards for your teaching ability. So, how did it come about that you were recognized as being a good teacher?
Well, the teachers' awards came from the superintendents of schools. They had the superintendents met and decided who were the best teachers, and most of it came from the school committee and the parents and so forth, you know. But other teachers, I don't know what it was. It was like, you know, you would go to assemblies and like they wouldn't sit next to you or whatever, you know. And it was just I never had anything like that. There were like about 3 teachers who really became very good friends of mine. I
Right.
mean, one of them was influential in having me do a show down in the New York Public Library in New York, you know, but and a couple more were okay, but most of them were, it was amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd never met anything like that in my life, you know. And then suddenly I started to get awards, and suddenly I was okay to a certain degree, you know.
Right.
But
But you got the awards because of the superintendent's assessment of what you did.
well, that one and the Medco, see, it was okay to have Medco if you didn't have too many Medco students.
Uh-huh.
You know.
I got you.
But I used to do things. I used to take kids out and on the street. You know, I came down to some motorcycle place in Alston, and the motorcycles came packed in these styrofoam things, all the parts, you know. So you got these things with the shapes of the motorcycle, and some of them had openings and whatever. And I always had a van, big van, carry paintings, and I loaded the van with these styrofoam forms. They were all out on the street. They throw them out, you know. Brought them back to the school and took all my kids out of class, went out on the street, and a film camera, movie camera, and filmed the kids with these things. They were looking through holes in them. They were dancing in the street, you know. And so I did a lot of things like that. And so it was much different. They got a new principal who was really good. He was good, you know. I tried to, you know, kind of religious thing. And that worked because he was interested in doing things that were related to diversity. And so after a bit, my son, the one that's the playwright, I got him to come up because he had a play called Voices to do the play there, and he had a fee. You know, he's coming from New York, and they decided that they couldn't pay him. Wellesley, right? Couldn't pay him, and so they decided that the principal, he pushed for it. He decided he would pay half of it, and I could pay the other half. So my son went nuts. He said no. He says, I'm gonna do that, you know. So he finally they refused to do the play, you know.
Right.
Even when things were getting better. You know?
Right.
So that was probably you know, they do things like on Martin Luther King's birthday, but it was all like, you know, superficial, you know.
Right.
Yeah. Teaching photography, it was great for me because my main thing was having kids do portraits, and so I could at that point do portraits of them. You know, I'd set up the lights and get real close-ups, you know, and there were a number of students of color, and so I could photograph them close up, you know, and I have a couple photographs. One with this girl used to come to school with these lollipops, you know, wrapped in paper, you know.
Yeah.
And she had them in her hair. She just, like, with cornrows,
Right.
and lollipops.
Right.
So I took a number of photographs of her, you know. So, and I would give them photographs to the kids, you know.
Right.
But now I've got a digital camera, and it's okay, but I still miss using those Leicas because you're manual and you're really doing the job yourself, you know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Although some of the digital cameras now, you know, do give you the ability to, you know, manipulate, you know, things like, you know, f-stop and what's the other term? What's the other word? The amount of time. No, the exposure length. And yeah, but I definitely know what you mean about the ability. Hold on, we'll just let that go.
The camera was good, like travel. We traveled a lot to Europe and Ireland, places that I had fellowships, like to Ireland. That painting is Ireland, and
Which one is that?
go there and paint.
Is that big one? That big green one? Which one's Ireland?
This one right
Big
here.
one? Okay.
St. Finian's Bay, and a lot of times, you know, the camera was handy. You could take a photograph. Some places, if you didn't want to stay there and paint all day, that's
Right.
one spot. The cliffs, or you just do, you know, like quick, like sketches, like these kind of sketches, pen and ink sketches.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you talk about, you know, the difference between, you know, the analog cameras and the digital cameras, and especially now with the digital cameras, you know, having so many automatic features. And I'll tell you something that I like about the digital cameras now, because I mean I did photography back with analog cameras, and there are two things now. Is that I find that now I can just focus solely on the composition. I don't really have to worry about the technical aspects so much, and especially when you take into account that, you know, you can, after you take the shot, you can do so much, you know, in the software, you know, to correct for stuff like exposure. I mean, so now I can really focus all my time on the composition. But the other thing is kind of related to the second thing I'm going to ask you about, and that is, did you do any work in the darkroom?
Well, I have a darkroom downstairs in the basement in the house, and I used to go down there. Matter of fact, I was teaching drawing, painting here, and then photography down in the basement, you know.
Right.
And I still have 5 enlargers down there. And I'd go down there. I'd love to go down there because then you can work on those prints, you know, and do that magic in the darkroom, bringing the photographs to light, you know, and learning that you can do certain things in printing to enhance the photograph, you know. So, but, you know, you can't do that forever. Time changes, you know. And,
Yeah.
Photography has changed, and I don't know. That was more experimental in things you could do back then.
Right. Like so.
These are okay. I mean, I have a digital camera now that Canon that take a lot of photographs, but then the processing of it is something I don't do because I don't do the computer and all that stuff.
Right, right. I got you.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, because when I did Darkroom work, what really bothered me, was not so much the chemicals, although they did have a tendency to give me a bit of a headache, and I kind of wondered, was I, maybe doing myself a little damage by exposing myself to the chemicals as much as I was, but it was the water. It was just like the usage of water just really bothered me, to go through all that water in the process of making prints. And so I long for the day when digital came around. And so now, since I am kind of a computer-oriented person, and the software has gotten so good, I mean, it's like the effects you can do in some of the software with the raw image, I mean, it's really, really pretty impressive. I mean, I'll grant that, we may be a ways away from the fidelity you get with analog, but I think what you lose in some fidelity, you gain, in ability to do other things, and what I think is probably maybe a little more environmentally friendly. But it's just my take on things, Ian, and I was just wondering, about your take on it, and I got it. So, interesting, you are a painter and a photographer, and I mean, what do you think is the different take on a scene by a painter versus a photographer? Because you mentioned, like, sometimes you travel places and you don't have time, to spend painting, and so you'll take a picture. But do you feel that the understanding or the approach to the subject is different between a photographer and a photographer and a painter?
Yeah, I think it was a time once when people used to say that photography wasn't an art form, but when you're dealing with light and dark and all of that, to me it's the same. I mean, I look at color and I can look at a black and white photograph and I can see the light and the dark areas, and I see them as shapes,
right?
And I can deal with that. So I don't know. My granddaughter came here and she was interested. And I said in photography, so I gave her a lot of books, and then they were teaching a course at, I think, Newton North or South, and in the summer on photography. And I said, it's great for you to go and take that course, and just to see what it's about. So I gave her my camera, and she went and she loved it, But then she got into digital, and she could teach me,
Right.
She, get more understanding, but now she's in college right now, but she's kind of now with the those little hand cameras,
Yeah, right.
But it's easier and it's quicker, and
right.
So, and that's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
When I retired from teaching in '96, then when I went back for 10 more years as a substitute teacher, teaching art, and it was really good because I was going to my old classrooms, and then I added to that the elementary school, kindergarten. I was teaching little kids, and that was fantastic, because I talk to them first, get their interest, you know, and do a lot of sketches in front of them, and that was great. And then, as I was doing this, suddenly everything turned into computers.
Right.
They wanted me to teach drawing classes using a computer, you know. And I kind of refused to do that because it seemed to me that I can draw a square or an apple or a shape and like this and like that, as opposed to dealing with a computer. So
Right.
they used to give me computers like to bring home over the summer to practice on.
Right.
And I took them back in the same box, you know.
Yeah.
So, but I understand what it's about. And then going back into the high school program, I would teach drawing and painting, and then they'd send me down the hall to the photo lab, completely different, you know. Huge machines, and the kids are doing, everybody's sitting at a computer, they're doing digital, doing posters, and, you know, and that was when I would go in with my sketchbook, and I'd sit there and I'd draw the kids
Right.
doing the work, you know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, certainly wasn't against it, but it was sort of past my time, you know.
Right. Yeah. You know, and you know, I kind of feel that one allows you to do composition, like the digital stuff allows you to focus on the composition, but I kind of feel that the analog isn't so much the analog film, but more, you know, just the drawing,
Right.
as in painting, really forces you to explore the subject very deeply. And so even though the composition is part of the subject, it's still because it takes so much longer, you know, to draw something, you can't help but get more intimate, you know, with what you're drawing. And so you get to know that subject much more deeply because you're just spending so much time with it. And do you feel the same way, or is that not something that you would agree with?
I mean, I see it's everything progresses on, and I can see that the progression of the way things are going, and I'm not sure that some things are shortcuts, and you miss sometimes the creativity involved in it, how to do certain things, you know. But it's everything is moving faster. I mean, I'm just thinking of the things we used to do, the work we used to do, that now can be done by a machine or a robot or whatever, you know.
Right.
So things are more automated, you know.
Right.
So I don't know. I think it's good in a way, but some of the skills get lost in a way, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. And as someone who likes the digital arts, and I feel that if I were to learn how to paint, I would learn a lot more about light, and surfaces, and were I to, you know, learn how to paint or take on painting a horse, I'd learn a lot about, you know, the anatomical structure of a horse, you know, that I'm just not going to learn by either taking a picture of it, be it analog or digital, or doing digital manipulation. But as a person that likes abstract art a lot, I really like the digital stuff because it allows me to explore variations, on certain concepts, in just a multitudes of ways that I wouldn't have time to do if I were doing it in an analog way, you know, and it allows me to explore and experiment, you know, like, you know, different color combinations and different repetitions of certain objects, and so it works for me in that respect. But
Yeah, well, you know, it's interesting because like it works for my son too. He all his stuff he can do, you know, by using a video camera and sets up a sound room and he has his actors go in there and they can rehearse and things like that. And to me, it's interesting. I think I would like to have done it, but now it's kind of passed. It passed me by, you know.
yeah,
I mean, I want to do some of the paintings that go back to, you know, there's a series of paintings on activism kind of things. Like I started with going back to the apartheid, you know,
yeah,
paintings that dealt with apartheid. They were pretty strong, pretty activist, you know, with going through South Africa and what was going on there. And then I hit a roadblock because there are a couple of people who had a gallery in Cambridge who decided that they wanted to come and see my paintings, you know. One woman was white, one woman was black. And they teamed together and they came here and I had all the apartheid paintings up, you know, and there were things where, you know, you had the South African police whipping people, beating people, and they were like, I was very intense in using color. Like, if somebody is clubbing somebody, his whole arm is red, you know, showing the intensity, or his hand is large. I purposely make hands large because what can be done with them, you know, more intense, you know.
right,
So I use that, and you probably most of my paintings are like that. At first, unintentionally, now intentionally, you know.
yeah,
But they came in, they said, "Oh, we can't show anything that shows violence," you know. I said, "Not even for a good cause," you know.
yeah,
So they were, I mean, both of them came in these big Cadillacs, you know.
oh,
And so then we kind of got into an argument because they talked about how strong, how Nelson Mandela was a great man, but so was, what's his name, the other guy, I can't think of his name. The other president who...
in South Africa.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't recall. His
I
name
can't
either.
think of his
Yeah,
name
that's okay. That's okay.
offhand,
But we know what you were talking about.
But he because they gave him a Nobel Peace Prize too, because they felt that he was helping, but the guy was, you know. So anyway, we got into a kind of argument about that, and so then they said, "Well, thank you. We don't think we can show your paintings." You know?
Yeah.
They wanted me to show some nice docile paintings, and so I was kind of against that. I mean, there were things I wanted to say, and this is my way of saying it. You know, like that sculpture there. You know, which deals with slave figures. You know, if you go on the other side, you'll see the anguish. You know.
Right. No, I see it. So yeah. So this is a very interesting sculpture, and I see what you mean. On the back of it, you have the anguish. I like this. You know, I wasn't aware until just now that you do sculpture. This is intense. This is beautiful. As much as it talks about or depicts an unpleasant topic, it's really great. So you do sculptures too. Like what percentage of your art would you say is sculpture? Or I would rephrase that and say, like, what percentage of time would you say that you devote to doing sculptures?
Well, it came about because Hank, you just saw come in a little while ago, he's an arborist, so he was cutting down trees. He bring these trees and he dump them in my yard, you know. So I was taking those the logs and piling them up like this. I had this like pyramid sculpture, and then I said, well, let me just try to carve into some of these and think about some things, you know. So that's what I've been doing, and most of the wood is gone now, but.
So that you just recently did this?
I've been working on that for a while. It takes time,
yeah.
You know.
But when did you start working on it?
And the chain I had, my father, it's like an antique chain. He had that, and I used that chain on there. People keep moving it around. But
Well, when did you start work on this?
When did I start?
Yeah.
Oh, probably about maybe 10 years ago or
okay.
so.
All right. And so, how long did it take you to do it?
I don't know. Every time I look at it, I see there's more to do.
Right,
you know?
I got you. You know?
So I use these up there on the other side. No, the other side of this beam, there are hand tools that I use.
Oh, okay.
So I've been using basically hand tools.
Oh, I see what you're kind of.
Yeah.
I got it.
It's cherry wood that has a nice grain to it when it's finished. You know?
Right. Got you. Yeah. So
and a lot of there are smaller ones like over there.
Yeah. Let me scoot over there and get some shots of them, and as I get some video of these. Let's talk a little bit about when you started teaching adults.
About what?
About when you started teaching adults, because Connie is one of your students, right?
Oh yeah.
So when you talked about how you started teaching kids, and at Wellesley, those were high school kids, right?
High school and middle school and
eventually elementary.
Elementary, yeah.
But when did you start teaching adults?
Adults, about, I guess around 74 or something like that.
Oh, so you've been teaching adults a long time?
Yeah, a long time.
Okay, so how many adults would you say you taught? How many adults would you say that you've taught? How many?
Oh, I'd say like maybe 15 or so.
Okay,
yeah.
All right. So
and they used to come and go, you know. Some of them were I had as students in Wellesley. They went away to college and became adults and came back here and took some courses with me. You know. Then I used to do a thing in the summer where I would take my van and pick up like 14, 15 kids during the day, and they come here and we have classes inside and out, just drawing, figure drawing, and still life drawing. And then I had a above ground pool out here, and at lunchtime they go out and they jump in the pool and and leave. So we did that. I guess for maybe about 20 years. They'd come, and they came for so long that some of them came with their cars driving in.
Right.
But I used to like always want to take them back because parents used to come and pick them up, but they never came on time.
Right.
So it was better for me to take them and drop them off at
Right.
certain places.
Right.
Otherwise, they'd be here till 7, 8 o'clock at
right.
night.
Yeah, I got you. I got you. But so what would you say is the big difference between teaching adults and teaching kids art?
I don't think there's any difference.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, in terms of what I'm teaching, I'm teaching the same way. I started as if they don't know anything.
Right.
You know, with the basics, and once they learn the basics, then I can go on to more structural things. You know.
Right.
A little bit about the body and the forms and the shapes, and once they learn all of that, then it's very difficult. I had people come in and say, "Well, I can draw the figure," you know. Well, I realize they can draw the figure, but I mean, it doesn't look like a figure that you'd want to have, you know, because they haven't had the basics. And in school today, as I went back, you know, to substitute teach, a woman who was teaching in my room, she was doing a course called master painting. She had Picasso's and Renoir, all these paintings. Actually, there were posters that I had left there. She had students copying those and signing their names. She called it the forgery paintings. And it bothered me because I used to use those posters, but I'd have them look at them. I'd talk about the posters and the shapes and the structure and the forms and how it was put together. And then I'd have them draw them, but just draw the shapes and the structure, but not copy them, you know.
Right.
See, and what happened, you wind up with abstract drawings or paintings, you know.
Right.
So, it's, once again, it's easy for teachers of art to teach art because they have books now and they do this, and this, you know. It's like the coloring book routine, you know. And I mean, I go there and I see a teacher never getting out of her seat, you know. And you got to go around to each student, you know.
Right.
But it's changed a lot, you know.
Well, it could just be that teacher. I mean, I doubt, dare I say, there are probably teachers now that also feel that you need to go around to the students and observe what they're doing. But I could be wrong, you know. But yeah, you were going to say?
Yeah, well, they used to give out, just before I left teaching, they gave out these booklets, and you had to write standards of how you would teach this. And your standards, they all had to be the same as the system. In other words, everybody had to do it this way. Well, I teach what they should know, but in my way, not in terms of somebody over here who's writing a book and say, you got to teach this, this, this.
Right.
You know, but you can get to the same point, but it's not very much fun, you know.
Right.
So.
I got you. I understand.
So I had a lot of those standard drawing things that they gave me that I probably threw away sometimes.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
Well, look, I want to go back to the civil rights stuff, uh, and yeah, I shouldn't phrase it that way. I want to go back to the art that you did, doing the more intense fight for civil rights. And you mentioned that you would give people disposable cameras in order to document
Right.
what had happened. It kind of reminds me now about how people use their cell phones to take videos of what's going on
Right, right.
and kind of document that way. But I was kind of wondering, was there something artistic that you then did with the images that you got, from that documentation? Was it, or was it purely used to record what had happened in case something bad happened, and you could use it as evidence of something?
Well, I'm not sure. I would collect the cameras and send them to Tracy Sugarman and these activists. But I don't think I ever saw the photographs that they took.
I got you. Okay.
They used them there,
Okay.
Um, um, no, I don't. I know I never. They never sent me the photographs.
Okay. All right. Well, that answers that question.
I was kind of interested because you felt slightly I don't know, not inappropriate, but you felt like you should be there doing it yourself, taking photographs, and going there.
Right.
But I was teaching and I couldn't go.
Right.
But there were a lot of organizations that you could get involved in to do stuff,
Right.
And some of them were good organizations. Some were religious, and it was interesting at that time because the one religious organization that I hooked up with was this minister, black minister, who fire and brimstone, activist, whatever,
Right.
This guy, but he wasn't doing anything,
Right.
He was,
Yeah.
he was talking,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. I know what you mean.
so
Yep.
sometimes, he's making a name for himself, and there were people who were going back and forth to the South, to deal with it. The woman from up here, Viola LaRusso, who went south and got killed, by the white people from Massachusetts. I mean, she was dedicated. She left her family and went down there.
Right.
My son has a video film on her, but there are also people who people use anything sometimes
Right.
to get themselves in the limelight.
I hear you. I know what you mean. And so, well, as you said, one of the aspects of talking with someone at your age and who's been involved in art for so long is that there is so much to talk about. And so we're going to have to come back. I'm going to have to come back and talk with some more about about your art itself, because in this conversation you point out some of your pieces, but looking around I see a lot of your art. And so what I'd like to do at some point is come back and just go around and I will take video of your paintings and other works of art, and you tell me the story behind them. All right, are you up for that?
Yeah.
Okay, great. But before we close this up, and kind of as a teaser, what I've been seeing, and of course the viewer is seeing, is this saxophone piece to your right. And there's a guy playing a big yellow saxophone. What's going on in that picture?
With this one right
Yeah,
here?
yeah. It's very colorful. It's very striking.
That's, well, there's another one behind it, But this one,
Well, I'll go and get video of the one behind it. Go ahead.
I used to go to Mexico in the summer, down to Puerto Vallarta to draw and paint. And, you know, teaching you get your 2 months off, and I'd go down there. And that was called Mi Casa, Su Casa.
Uh-huh.
And that's the Mexican chair. And I have those chairs in the house and upstairs
Uh-huh.
that I brought back. But they we were talking a little bit about photography and light and dark and whatever, and I was trying to work with these pencils to see how dark I could get something and have it, the light come out from it. And so I had this model and I had a figure sitting there, and I just kept reworking it, and as if you're in Mexico and sitting in one of the little houses, you know.
Okay. All right. Got it. You know.
So there's one behind that. I don't know what.
The one with the big hand?
You probably lean it forward a little bit. Were you talking about this one or?
Well, you said the one behind. I was talking about this one here.
Oh, you were talking about this one?
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about that.
No. But
Oh,
I'm still
okay.
interested. But no, I was talking about this one. You know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
This
But still,
one-
I'm happy to learn about that one because
Yeah.
as I look around, I see so much that I'm interested in, which is why we're coming back. You
Well,
know.
this is old. This was, I used to do a lot of paintings on jazz musicians. I used to go to all the jazz shows and stuff like that. And so this is part of that,
Yeah.
jazz thing. There are a lot of paintings on jazz that I don't have anymore. They seem to sell.
Uh-huh.
And this is an old one I had, and I looked, you know, you paint and then you say, well, I'm finished, you know. 5 years later, 2 years later, you look at it and say, God, did I do that? I know now that I have to make this deeper and other things, you know. So I began to pull this out because I wanted to work on it again. But
I see.
this is like, you know, the saxophone, Ella Fitzgerald maybe, and you know, the trumpet and.
That's a nice piece. It's a very nice piece. You know. Since just out of curiosity, since you're here at the jazz, did you ever go to the Jazz Fest in New Orleans?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, that's my hometown. That's why I wonder. You know.
Well,
So.
A lot of movement too in some of them, you know. You can, and color sometimes has to make it look like things are moving musically, you know.
Right. Right. All right. Well, as I said, we're going to come back. So we're going to wrap this up for now,
Okay.
and then I'll make arrangements to come back, and we're going to check out a lot of your art. And,
Yeah, that'd be
and
great.
Talk about it, and so I want to thank you for taking the time. And
No, I appreciate it,
yeah.
man. It's good for me. I will try to pull out when the paintings go in like series, like there's the apartheid series, that was probably the first, and then there's the New York City subway series.
Uh-huh.
That was like when I was going to NYU, going to school down there, and going on that subway, you saw all sorts of things and people. So I have the woman who lived over there next door, who was real racist. I put her in the New York City subway with this guy with a big afro standing over her, you know.
Uh-huh.
So there are a lot of things like that, you know.
Nice. Well, thank you thank you very much. So it really makes me look forward to coming back. So we're gonna wrap this up for now. All right.
Okay.
Thanks.